A wild horse was agonizing, trapped in the stone well. Victor sped up his BMW, intent on driving past. Animal problems don't pay the bills. But when he saw the sign for Clearwater Ranch, his blood ran cold. What happened next, no one expected. Subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. Have you ever had to choose between money and doing the right thing? The story starts now. Victor Thorne fired 17 people on a Monday in March. 17 families, 17 salaries cut with the same coldness he used to pick out a tie. Sitting in his $12,000 German leather chair, he watched each face across the glass table as HR read the notification. He didn't blink. He didn't apologize. Efficiency, he called it, the kind of man you pass on the street and forget, or maybe remember, for the wrong reason. At 59, Victor had built an $80 million real estate empire by buying worthless land and turning it into gold. Shopping malls where there used to be failing farms. Residential buildings where old families once raised cattle. Progress, he'd say. Others called it predatory gentrification. He had everything except what mattered. His philosophy was simple. Feelings don't pay the bills. Compassion doesn't build skyscrapers. Pity doesn't move markets. 40 years in the business had taught him the world has two types of people, those who buy and those who are bought. Victor always chose the first team. That afternoon, he drove 4 hours into the countryside to inspect his newest acquisition. $12 million for a rural property with no commercial potential, according to the desperate seller. Victor smiled. That was precisely the kind of desperation that yielded profit. The dirt road punished the BMW's suspension. He didn't care. In 2 years, that road would be asphalt. The centuries-old trees would be sold as lumber. The entire valley would be concrete and steel. That's when the engine overheated. Steam rose from the hood like cigarette smoke in the cold. Victor cursed under his breath, parked, and got out to inspect the damage. The radiator had cracked. He was stuck there until he could get a tow. It was while walking around the property that he heard the sound. Desperate whinnies cut through the valley's silence. It wasn't the sound of a domestic horse. It was the cry of an animal in real panic. Victor followed the noise out of curiosity. Maybe a predator attacking a neighbor's cattle, maybe nothing important. What he found made him stop. A wild horse, dark bay with a white patch on its chest, was trapped in a stone well about 10 feet deep. An old, abandoned structure, probably for water collection. The animal must have fallen in during the night trying to drink. Now it was exhausted, its coat soaked with sweat and mud, its eyes wild, like one that had never trusted any human. Victor looked around. No one nearby, no working farms for miles. The horse would die there if no one did anything. His first instinct was pragmatic. Go back to the car, call for a tow, leave. It wasn't his problem. Wild horses died in nature every day, part of the natural cycle. But something about that place bothered him. The faded sign stuck on an old fence post. Clearwater Ranch. The jagged mountains on the horizon. The smell of wet earth mixed with eucalyptus. The strange feeling that he had been there before. Impossible. He was sure he had never set foot on those lands. Victor took off his $3,000 Hugo Boss suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves, not out of compassion, out of cold logic. A dead wild horse on the property could attract unwanted attention from environmental agencies. It could complicate development plans. Better to deal with it quickly. He climbed into the well using vines and protruding rocks, ruining his Italian shirt and scratching his hands. The horse recoiled when it saw him, but it was too weak to resist much. Victor tied an improvised rope with branches and managed to create a rustic ramp. It took 2 hours. When he finished, he was unrecognizable, clothes torn, mud up to his neck, sweat mixed with blood from the scratches. The horse stumbled out and bolted into the mountains without looking back. Victor stood there panting, watching the animal disappear among the trees. That's when he noticed something that didn't make sense. On the edge of the well, half buried in the dirt, a rusty horseshoe. Wild horses don't wear horseshoes. Victor got home at 10 that night in a worse mood than usual. The BMW needed complete repair. Radiator, scratched paint, mud-stained upholstery. $15,000 in damages because of an animal that didn't even say thank you. He tried to forget. He had an important meeting the next morning. Japanese investors interested in the Valley project. Big money, the kind of deal that paid for 3 generations' retirement. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the horse trapped in the well, its desperate eyes, the impossible horseshoe. He woke up 4 times checking emails that didn't exist. At the office, his assistant Clara noticed the difference. "Mr. Thorne, are you all right? You look tired." Victor grunted without looking up from the screen. "I'm fine. Prepare the documentation for the Japanese." But he wasn't fine. During the $1 million meeting, his mind kept returning to the Valley. When the lead investor spoke of sustainable development, Victor got distracted thinking about the rusty horseshoe. When they showed blueprints for the shopping mall, he saw wild horses running among the condemned trees. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises of follow-up. The Japanese would leave, satisfied. The deal was practically closed. Victor should have been euphoric. Instead, he picked up the phone and called the veterinarian who served the few farms in the region. "Dr. Miller, Victor Thorne. I need some information about a horse." "Sick horse? I can make a house call this afternoon." "It's not mine, it's wild. I found one trapped in a well yesterday. I wanted to know, is it normal for them to have horseshoes?" Silence on the other end. "Mr. Thorne, wild horses don't wear horseshoes. If it had one, it was domesticated at some point. It probably escaped or was abandoned long enough to become wild again." Victor hung up with more questions than answers. He spent the rest of the afternoon trying to focus on contracts. He made 3 calls to important clients and forgot what he had agreed to in all of them. Clara brought him coffee that he didn't drink. He signed documents without reading them properly. At 6 in the evening, he did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He cancelled his business dinner. Instead, he drove to a junkyard in the suburbs and bought a '98 Ford pickup truck for $8,000 cash. Plenty of money in his pocket, no bureaucracy, no questions asked. Clara nearly choked when she saw him arrive in the company parking lot the next day. "Mr. Thorne, where's your BMW?" "At the shop." A lie. The BMW was at the dealership, brand new from the repair shop. The truth was simpler. A BMW couldn't handle dirt roads. That morning, instead of going to the office, Victor returned to the Valley. He couldn't explain why. He found the well empty, as expected. The horse was gone, as expected. But there were fresh tracks in the mud. Footprints too large to be from just one animal. The horse wasn't alone. Victor followed the tracks through the woods. 15 minutes of walking, and he reached a hidden clearing. There was the bay horse, peacefully grazing alongside 3 others. All wild, all without marks of domestication, except for one thing. They all had the same star-shaped white patch on their chest. When Victor saw the rotten wooden sign nailed to a nearby tree, with letters almost erased by time, his heart pounded. "Clearwater Project, Wild Horse Protection and Study, 1987-2010. Below, in handwriting he recognized, it read, "In memory of John Thorne, who believed every animal deserves a second chance. John Thorne." His father. Victor stood in front of the sign as if he had been punched in the gut. John Thorne. Dead for 15 years. The man he had disappointed, ignored, and abandoned when he needed him most. Here's where things get ugly, because it wasn't a coincidence. It never is. His hands trembled as he pulled the sign from the tree. The wood was soft with moisture, but the letters were still legible. He recognized his father's crooked handwriting, carved with a pocket knife. John was never a man of computers or printers. He was a man who did things with his own hands, just as he had done with Victor for the first 15 years of his life. He sat on the damp earth and let the memories flood back. 1987. Victor was 14, and his father was a rural veterinarian. He earned little, worked hard, but had time to teach his son about horses, about the land, about treating an injured animal as if it were a person. In those days, Victor still believed that money wasn't everything. In those days, Victor still had a father. The argument happened when he turned 18. John wanted his son to study veterinary medicine, to follow in the family's footsteps. Victor wanted college in the big city, business administration, commerce. He wanted to get ahead in life, not be stuck in a stinky corral caring for other people's animals. You'll regret it, son. Money without purpose is just colored paper. And purpose without money is poor people's talk. Those were the last words they exchanged for 8 years. Victor graduated in business administration, became a real estate agent, then an entrepreneur. He made a fortune buying and selling the land his father loved. Every rural property he transformed into a gated community was proof that he had chosen correctly, or so he thought. In 2010, John had a heart attack. Victor found out from a neighbor 3 days later. He arrived at the hospital when his father was already admitted, weak but lucid. I came as soon as I heard. Took you 15 years to hear? It wasn't bitterness, it was pure sorrow. Victor tried to talk about money, better health insurance, a private hospital, expensive treatment. John shook his head. It's not about that, son. It never was about that. Then what is it about? About being here. About not being afraid to get your hands dirty for those who need it. Victor left irritated. He returned the next day with private hospital papers already filled out. The nurse said John had left during the night, not for home, forever. In the nightstand drawer, he left a letter. Victor, I spent the last 20 years caring for the wild horses of Clearwater Valley. They have no one else. If you ever want to forgive me, forgive them first. Perhaps then you'll understand who your father truly was. I love you. John. Victor never went to the valley. He sold his father's house, donated his belongings, and moved on. Success was the best medicine for guilt, or so he thought. Now, 15 years later, he was sitting on the land his father had protected, looking at horses his father had fed, holding a sign his father had made with his own hands. The bay horse, Star, approached slowly, without fear. As if it knew Victor was John's son. Victor extended his hand, and for the first time since childhood, a wild horse let him touch its neck. That's when he saw the second sign, half hidden among the dry leaves. Victor, if you're reading this, it means you finally came. The horses are waiting. So am I. The date on the wood, December 2023. Written 2 years ago. As if his father knew he would return someday. Impossible. John died 15 years ago. Unless... Victor searched the woods like a desperate man. There were more signs hidden among the trees, all with his father's impossible handwriting. Messages dated 2015, 2018, 2020, all addressed to him. Victor, the horses are well, but old. They need someone who understands. Victor, the county wants to sell the valley. Don't let them. Victor, forgiveness is a choice. Choose wisely. Funny how we only realize the obvious when it's already too late. They weren't messages from his dead father. They were messages from someone who had taken over his project, someone who knew Victor well enough to know that one day he would come. He found the wooden cabin hidden behind the dense woods. Inside, supplies, veterinary medicines, detailed records about each horse in the herd, feeding schedules, vaccination timelines, photographs of the animals organized by year. On the rustic wooden table, a folder with legal documents. Victor opened it, and his throat went dry. Deeds of ownership, all signed by John Thorne Jr., himself, all forged, all dated from the last 15 years. Someone had used his name to keep the project going. Someone had prevented the valley from being sold by creating a phantom owner. Someone had forged his signature hundreds of times to protect the horses he had never known. In the last drawer of the table, a recent letter, fresh ink, dated 3 days ago. Victor, I heard you bought the valley. It's ironic. I spent 15 years forging documents in your name to protect this place from real estate speculators. Now you are the speculator. I won't try to convince you. Your father tried his whole life and couldn't. But the horses deserve for you to know the truth before you turn this into a shopping mall. They are direct descendants of the first wild horses John saved in 1987. Some are over 20 years old. They knew your father. They trust humans because of him. If you destroy this place, they will die. Not from injury, from despair. It's your property, your decision, your conscience. I'll be here at 7 in the morning on Thursday if you want to talk. Dr. Robert Miller, the veterinarian your father trained. Victor checked his phone. Thursday, 6:30 in the morning. When he looked up from the screen, Dr. Miller was standing in the cabin doorway. Around 70 years old, white hair, calloused hands of someone who works with the land. The same man who had answered his phone call about horseshoes. You're early. Didn't sleep. They measured each other in silence. The veterinarian broke the impasse first. Your father talked about you every day, until the very last. My father died hating me. Your father died waiting. Victor sat on the log that served as a bench. Why did you forge my signature for 15 years? Because John asked me to. On his last day, he said, Robert, Victor will come back. When he does, he can't find this place destroyed. I thought it was crazy, but I promised. Victor's phone rang. It was Clara, from the company. Meeting with the Japanese in 2 hours. $12 million depending on that conversation. The shopping mall that would turn the valley into gold. Victor looked at the bay horse, Star, grazing peacefully in the clearing. Then he looked at the phone. For the first time in 40 years of his career, he hung up a business call without answering. That decision cost $12 million. For the first time in his life, Victor didn't care about the price. The Japanese cancelled the contract the same day. $12 million evaporated with a single unanswered call. Victor's partners called an emergency meeting. The entire company speculated about what had happened to the man who never lost money. Victor didn't show up at the office for a week. Instead, he spent his days at Robert's cabin, learning about horses he should have known 15 years earlier. He learned that the 22-year-old grey mare had been his father's first rescue, that the black stallion had a barbed wire scar because John had arrived too late to save him without a mark, that they all ate from his father's hand and waited for him every morning until the day he didn't return. Did they miss him? Victor asked, watching the herd graze. Horses have better memories than many humans. They missed John until the day you showed up. Robert paused. It's strange. They never approached me like this. They trust me, but they keep their distance. With you, it's different. It's like they recognize something. Victor thought about the rusty horseshoe, the impossible signs, the project his father had kept secret for 23 years. He thought about the 8 years of silence he had imposed between them. The ignored phone calls, the unopened letters, the funeral he had missed out of pride. Robert, I need some information. Do you have a list of people my father helped over the years? I do. He recorded everything. The veterinarian opened a drawer full of handwritten notebooks. Why? Because I need to apologize. The list had 417 names, families John had helped with sick animals without charging, people he had taught to care for injured horses, veterinarians he had trained in alternative methods. Victor started with those closest. Mary Sanchez, a widow who lost her homestead in 2018 when Victor bought the land to build a condominium. John had cared for her horses for free for 10 years. When Victor appeared at her door with the property deed back in her name, with no strings attached, Mary didn't smile. She didn't say thank you, but her eyes, for a brief second, softened. She took the envelope and closed the door. Victor walked down the steps. It was a start. Charles Davis, who lost his job at Victor's construction company after questioning the demolition of native habitat. John had saved Charles's horse when no veterinarian would attend because the family had no money. Victor appeared with a job offer and double the salary. Charles spat on the ground and slammed the door in his face. Some forgiveness doesn't exist. Mrs. Regina, a retired teacher whom John visited every month to care for her grandkid's pet pony. Victor had bought the school grounds where she worked and turned it into a parking lot. She accepted the money he offered but said, "Your father was proud of his son. I pity you. Redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about doing things differently, even knowing that it might never happen." For 3 months, Victor donated properties, cancelled environmentally destructive projects, hired people he had unjustly fired. He lost 2/3 of his fortune and 80% of his partners. He gained something he couldn't yet name. In the cabin, Robert observed the transformation with scientific curiosity. "Your father said you'd come back changed." "How could he have known?" "Because you're alike. It just took you 40 years to find out." The bay horse, Star, grazed closer and closer to the cabin, as if it knew it finally had someone from the family nearby. Victor woke up every day at 5 in the morning to feed the herd. For the first time in his life, he was eager to get out of bed. 2 years passed since Victor cancelled the Japanese project. He was 61 now, and Star was an estimated 12 years old. In the wild, a 12-year-old wild horse would already start showing signs that time was passing. Victor noticed it first in the way Star walked. Still strong, still wild, but with more careful steps on the rocks. The other horses in the herd seemed to understand, grazing closer to him, as if to protect the veteran who had survived longer than any other. Funny. We spend our lives running from death, until we realize it's the only teacher who truly teaches us how to live. The Clearwater Project was officially running now. Victor had legalized everything, created a non-profit foundation, hired 3 veterinarians and 2 biologists. The valley housed 16 wild horses, the largest protected captive herd in the state. Universities sent students to conduct research. Families brought children to meet the horses. Tourists came from other towns to photograph the animals that had been saved from real estate development. Victor discovered that preserving nature also brought profit, just in a different way. But it wasn't about money. It had never been about money. It was about waking up and being sure he was doing something that mattered. It was about looking in the mirror and recognizing the person reflected. It was about honoring someone's memory instead of running from it. One morning, Victor found a letter on the cabin table. Feminine handwriting, delicate. "Mr. Thorne, I'm Anna, Mary Sanchez's daughter. My mother passed away last month, but before she died she told me about your visit, about the deed you returned. She never said thank you personally, but every day she watered her flowers saying, 'At least one Thorne remembers how to act right.' I thought you should know, Anna." Victor reread the letter 3 times, alone in the cabin, with Star watching through the window. For the 3rd time in 61 years of life, he cried. Not from sadness, from gratitude. That afternoon, a young entrepreneur appeared in the valley. Expensive suit, fancy car, a $1 million proposal to turn part of the area into a luxury resort. "Mr. Thorne, you built an empire buying and selling land. You must understand opportunity. I offer $20 million for half the property. We'll keep the horses, add tourist value." Victor looked at the young man and saw himself 30 years earlier, ambitious, pragmatic, convinced that money solved everything. "How much net worth do you have, young man?" $15 million, sir." "And how many people truly love you?" The entrepreneur blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "Simple answer. How many people would miss you if you died today? Silence. I had $80 million and 0 people. Today I have $20 million and a list of 400 families my father helped, and I'm trying to win them back, one by one. Victor pointed to Star, grazing peacefully in the clearing. That horse is 12 years old. In the wild, he'd probably have 5 more years. I, at 61, understand the feeling. But for the first time, I don't fear the end. I'm sure that when my time comes, I won't die as I lived for 50 years, alone and empty. The entrepreneur left without understanding anything. Robert, who had overheard the conversation, smiled. Your father would say the same thing. My father did say the same thing. It took me 40 years to listen. April 15th, the anniversary of John Thorne's death. Victor woke before the sun and walked to the makeshift grave he had built in the clearing, a large stone with his father's name engraved, and the phrase, "A man who believed in second chances." Dozens of people arrived during the morning. Mary Sanchez would have come if she were alive. Her daughter Anna came with her husband and 2 small children. Charles Davis appeared by surprise. The man who had spat on the ground 2 years earlier now brought wildflowers picked from the very property Victor had returned. Mrs. Regina, the teacher, arrived with a cane but smiling, carrying drawings her former students had made of the horses. 17 families in total. People John had helped and Victor had hurt, but who now returned not out of obligation, but for something akin to forgiveness. Robert organized a table with old photos of John caring for the horses, images from 1987, when it all began. Young John, the first rescued horses, the valleys still wild and untouched. He believed every animal deserved a second chance, Robert told the small crowd. He didn't know that the one who most needed a second chance was his own son. Victor didn't give a speech. Instead, he talked about the last 2 years, about learning to feed horses at 5 in the morning, about returning properties to families he had harmed, about discovering that redemption isn't an event. It's a daily process of choosing differently. Star approached during the story, as he always did when he sensed Victor was emotional. Now 12 years old, the horse moved slower, but still carried the wild dignity that had captivated Victor on the first day. Victor extended his hand and touched the animal's neck. I don't know if horses understand forgiveness, he told the group. But I know this one taught me that it's never too late to be different. My father planted this seed 23 years ago. Star helped me let it grow. A girl of about 7, Mrs. Regina's granddaughter, raised her hand. Mister, does the horse remember your dad? Victor pondered the question, the impossible horseshoe, the signs that seemed like messages from beyond, the way Star had trusted him from day one. I don't know if he remembers, but I'm sure he feels. Horses know when someone is family. The afternoon passed with stories about John. Plans to expand the project, children running among the horses who watched curiously but kept a respectful distance. Victor realized that for the first time in 15 years, the anniversary of his father's death didn't just bring pain, it brought gratitude. As the sun began to set and the families left, Victor remained alone in the clearing with Star and Robert. Your father would be proud, the veterinarian said, tidying up the last remnants of the tribute. Victor walked to the memorial stone and rested his hand on the cold surface. Dad, I can't go back and be the son I should have been, but I can be different today and tomorrow, and for the time I have left. You believed in second chances. Star gave me mine. Now, it's my turn to pass that on. The bay horse approached and nudged Victor's hand with its muzzle. It wasn't romantic anthropomorphism. It was a real connection between 2 survivors who had learned to trust again. On the horizon, 16 wild horses grazed free on lands protected forever. John would have approved. Victor smiled. For the first time in 40 years, there was no rush to get anywhere. He was exactly where he needed to be. This story is about regret, About words we didn't say, calls we didn't make, people we left behind while pursuing things that don't matter. If you have someone you love but are distant from due to pride, anger, or being too busy, don't wait to need a wild horse to teach you what truly matters. Call, write, show up. Because unlike Victor, you still have time. And if this story reminded you of someone, or if you believe in second chances, share it. We never know who needs to hear this today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.